Can Leicester City beat Manchester United to get into a Champions League spot, or is the Europa League where they'll rot? Let's talk about that. Hey everyone, it is Finn here. That is FYNN, and the day is finally here. It is finally the end of this Premier League season.
It's enough to make a grown man cry.
Which, what a weird season it has been, with an unusual break in between. But for the final time this season, guys, I will be predicting every single fixture for this Premier League Matchweek 38. And as it is the final match week of the season, please put down in the comment section down below which team you support, along with your rating out of 10 for how well your team has performed. The first match in the last week of this Premier League season will be between Arsenal and Watford. Now, I'd really like to say I'm confident in Arsenal's abilities to beat the likes of Watford, but that would be a complete lie. I don't know what to think of Arsenal, to be honest with you. One week they'll beat Manchester City and Liverpool, and then they'll go ahead and they'll lose to the likes of Aston Villa. I really don't know what to expect from Arsenal. They've had an awful Premier League season. They are currently 10th on the Premier League table. Now, I do still think that they will get the win over the likes of Watford. I do believe they will get a 2-0 win over Watford, which, yes, does unfortunately mean I do think Watford will get relegated this Premier League season. But at the same time, they've got the third worst defense in the Premier League this season. They did awfully in the season, considering they only had 1 or 2 wins by the halfway point. They just sacked Nigel Pearson as their manager, which I think was definitely the wrong move. I think he was the right manager to rebuild Watford, and all he needed was a proper transfer window. But now, in terms of a player to watch, I do think it will be one of the Arsenal strikers, either Lacazette or Aubameyang. Lacazette, in my opinion, has been in incredible form since football has returned, but I do think it will be Aubameyang in this case. The Arsenal striker has gotten 20 Premier League goals this season. He's been in fire form. In the FA Cup recently, he got 2 great goals versus Manchester City. I do think he will be the player to watch. Burnley versus Brighton is next. Now, the record between these two teams in the last 5 games, Burnley have won 2, there have been 3 draws, and Brighton has not won any games, which I do think this trend will continue. I can see Burnley getting a 1-0 win over the likes of Brighton, purely because if you look at both of these teams form-wise, Brighton have only gotten 2 wins in the year 2020, which is a bit shocking, to be honest with you, and I really did expect better from them. And looking at the likes of Burnley, they have gotten only 1 loss in their last 15 Premier League games, which is absolutely amazing, and I can see Burnley really still continuing their form. They've actually had a very good season, and they should be very proud of themselves. They've been very good defensively, and that's why I can't see Brighton scoring against them. 15 clean sheets this Premier League season for Burnley, along with the fact that they do play a 4-4-2 formation, which is very defensive and very hard to break down. And although I like Mapai in the striker position for Brighton, let's be honest, he's a bit small. It's almost like when small kids in school play against the older years. It's just for fun, isn't it? So yes, in terms of a player to watch, once again, I know I always say this for all the Burnley games, it's going to either be a defender or a goalkeeper, and I have to go for the amazing Nick Pope in the goalkeeper position for the likes of Burnley. I do think he'll stop absolutely every shot that comes his way. He's been an incredible goalkeeper for Burnley. He has definitely exceeded my expectations, and I do think that he's done a great job this season, and he will continue it. Chelsea versus Wolves is next, which once again, this is a huge game. This decides if Wolves get into a Europa League spot, along with the fact that this decides if Chelsea get into a Champions League spot, because there is a possibility that if they do lose, that they could fall out of a Champions League spot, which would be horrific for them. But you know what? I do think Chelsea will get a win over Wolves. I think that they will get a 2-1 win over Wolves. If you look at the likes of Wolves, I don't know if they played that well versus Crystal Palace. I think defensively, they made a few too many mistakes. But you know what? When they do shoot, I think that they have potential to be very clinical. I do think that they will have a lot of chances versus Chelsea, and I do think Chelsea has to be very aware of that. They have conceded a lot of goals lately, especially versus Liverpool, where they lost 5-3, which, to be honest, I blame Kepa Arrizabalaga in that goalkeeper position is so slow. I mean, Firmino had time to go home, whiten his teeth, come back and score that goal. Along with that, I also do think the reason that they did lose was poor squad selection. I mean, who benches Christian Pulisic versus the likes of Liverpool? Once he came on, he was definitely a game changer. And if they do start Pulisic versus the likes of Wolves, I can definitely see Chelsea getting a 2-1 win. Saying that though, in terms of a player to watch, I am going to go for Olivier Giroud in that striker position, purely because he has been so clinical as of late, and ever since football has returned, he's definitely looked like one of the best strikers in the world, which is so weird to think that he's going to be replaced by Timo Werner. And also looking at the likes of Chelsea, to think that they also have Abraham and Batshuayi. I mean, how can you have so many good strikers? Crystal Palace versus Tottenham Hotspurs is next. Now Spurs, a lot like Arsenal, two top teams, have definitely not performed this Premier League season, and they would really hope for better things in years to come. Now looking at the likes of Spurs, I mean looking at them as of late, they've gotten some incredible results versus both Arsenal and Leicester City, and they got a pretty comfortable result versus the likes of Newcastle. But you know what, I do see Spurs getting a win versus the likes of Crystal Palace, purely because looking at Palace versus Wolves, their touches were way too heavy. They didn't seem to really be that confident on the ball, and any shots that they did have were from long range. They really didn't have any chances versus Wolves, and I can see a very similar situation versus the likes of Spurs. I see Spurs getting a 3-1 win, just purely because more players are picking up on form. As I've said before, Ben Davies is really picking up on form. Their strikers are really picking up on form, and I do think the player to watch will be the likes of Harry Kane. Harry Kane has really started to score more and more as of late, and he is on 17 Premier League goals this season, which isn't bad considering the fact that he was injured for a matter of months. Everton versus Bournemouth is next. Now Bournemouth, if they do lose this game, unfortunately they will get relegated, a lot like Watford, who I did mention earlier. And unfortunately, if they do get relegated, I do see them losing Nathan Aka, which if he moves to Manchester United, by the way, I can't say I would complain, but unfortunately I do see Bournemouth losing to the likes of Everton. Looking at Everton, they have struggled to pick up wins in recent games, but you know what, they did recently get a win versus Sheffield United, which I was very impressed by, and their best form this season has been from home, which they are playing at Goodison Park, and I think that can be a huge factor to how they can beat Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth, though, they have desperately been fighting for survival towards the end of the season, and we've seen that. We've seen really good results from them as of late. I mean, they've beaten both Leicester and Spurs with huge wins, but you know what, versus the likes of Southampton, I really didn't see Bournemouth perform well, and that is a win that they should have gotten, and that really could have been a step closer to securing them safety. But I do think they will get relegated, because looking at them tackling wise, they absolutely lunged into every single tackle they did. Callum Wilson in the striker position couldn't place a pass perfectly throughout that entire game. They did so poorly, and I think the thing that will cost them a spot in the Premier League next season is the fact that they panic, and I do see them panicking versus the likes of Everton. So you know what, I do have to say I will give a 2-1 win in Everton's favour. And in terms of a player to watch, once again, I do think it will be either Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison up forward for Everton. I think those two attackers for Everton have done a solid job, and the way that they are growing and improving, I can genuinely see this Everton team really competing for at least a mid-table spot, and they really should compete for a Europa League spot with two attackers like that. And hopefully that is what we can see from them next season. You know what, I will say my player to watch is Richarlison, just once again because he's been in better form since football has returned. 13 goals this season, same as Calvert-Lewin. I think that they can do a solid job versus Bournemouth. The next game is probably the biggest game this match week. It is of course my team Manchester United playing away versus the likes of Leicester City. Now looking at the last 10 fixtures between these two teams, I was actually shocked to see the stats. Leicester City have not won any games in the last 10 meetings between these two teams. There have been 3 draws and 7 United wins, which gives me a lot of confidence, especially because Leicester City have not been in form since football has returned. Only 2 wins, which once again gives me a lot of confidence. So I want to go with Manchester United with a 2-1 win, which I'm not sure if that's biased or not, because I just see United being in better form, although in their last 3 games, I wouldn't say they've been impressive. I mean, it was purely because of that handball from Pogba in the box, which I can't say I blame Pogba too much, guys. I mean, I can't say I would have reacted any differently to balls hitting me in my face. But you know what, as I said, I do think United will get a 2-1 win over the likes of Leicester, and I really hope that is the case because, of course, United is my team, which, by the way, stay tuned for my Manchester United career mode coming to this channel very, very soon. But yes, all United does need is a draw from this fixture, and who do I think will be the player to watch? This is going to sound pretty bad, but I'm going to go for Bruno Fernandes as my player to watch. Not because he's going to necessarily do very well, but I think we're going to win a penalty versus Leicester City, and that's how we're going to win. Is that bad to admit? Manchester City versus Norwich is next. Now you know what's going to happen, guys. I'm definitely going to go for Manchester City on this one. It has to be a 4-0 win, in my opinion, because if you look at the likes of Norwich, they are already relegated. They had an awful performance versus the likes of Burnley, which, what a shame. They are already relegated, and versus the likes of Burnley, they got 2 red cards and an own goal. You have to feel at least somewhat sorry for Norwich, but at the same time, the last meetings between these two teams earlier this season, Norwich got the win, funnily enough, but you know what, I am going to go for City, although they haven't had the season they expected. Manchester City, though, have won their last 4 games in a row in the Premier League, which they haven't had the best season, to be 100% honest, because 4 wins in a row is actually the best they've done this Premier League season. They've definitely underperformed, in my opinion, but 16 goals in their last 4 games in the Premier League. I can see them getting another huge result versus the likes of a defeated Norwich team. Now, in terms of a player to watch, I mean, I could potentially go for Kevin De Bruyne because he's got 19 assists this Premier League season. He could potentially get a 20th assist. But you know what? I am going to go for Raheem, the Dream Sterling, the English winger, but purely because I didn't expect him to do this well this Premier League season. But you know what? He is on 19 Premier League goals this season. He has definitely picked up on form, and I do think he will get his 20th goal this season. Newcastle United versus Liverpool is next. Now, let's be 100% honest. Now that Liverpool have lifted the trophy itself, I'm expecting a very hungover Liverpool team versus the likes of Newcastle. I do, though, still expect Liverpool to get a win, but once again, anything can happen, because ever since Liverpool officially won the title, they have not been the same Liverpool team we've seen throughout the season. They really have had a dip in form, but hey, who cares? They've won the title. They can do whatever they want. But I can still see Liverpool getting a 2-0 win over the likes of Newcastle. I don't see Newcastle United scoring against Liverpool because, I mean, their top scorer this season came from, well, he who shall not be named, with only 6 goals. They really desperately do need a new striker, Newcastle, and I hope that is what they end up finding. And in terms of a player to watch in this fixture, I could easily put down one of the Liverpool front 3, but I actually think it's going to be the young Trent Alexander-Arnold in that right back position for Liverpool. For a right back, he's gotten 13 Premier League assists this season. He has looked so unstoppable, and guys, in my opinion, if Trent Alexander-Arnold continues this throughout his career, he could genuinely go down as one of the best right backs of all time, which is pretty scary. The second last game of this entire season, not even just of this match week, will be between Southampton and Sheffield United, which is actually a very tricky game to look at, purely because Southampton have actually been in fire form towards the end of the season, and Sheffield United have had a great season overall. And there's only one fixture to look at in previous games between these two teams, and it was in Southampton's favour. But this time around, I do think I will go for the likes of Sheffield United, purely because they've had a better season overall, and I do really like the likes of Sheffield United. But once again, as I said, absolutely anything can happen. I don't think Southampton looked that strong against the likes of Bournemouth. I mean, I think they won 2-0 purely because Bournemouth's defense was so poor. It was so poor it had to sell its fridge for food. But in terms of a player to watch, I'm actually going to go for Danny Ings. Although I have put him in the losing team, 21 goals for the Southampton striker is absolute madness. And you know, it kind of redeems myself if my prediction's wrong and Southampton wins, because I'm like, oh, you know what, I put Danny Ings there anyway, so you know what, it's at least a half win. Now it is time to predict the final game of the season. I almost feel like we should have a few seconds just to remember how great this season's been. So West Ham versus Aston Villa, and I actually think this game is going to be a lot closer than what most people think. Now, looking at West Ham, although they are actually pretty close to the relegation zone, I actually think they've gotten some very impressive results as of late. Especially Antonio, who, if you did not know, Antonio is the top scorer in the Premier League since football has returned. He's been in great form, and he actually played pretty well versus the likes of Manchester United. Although his goal was a penalty, which once again, don't blame Pogba too much. I'm actually going to go for a win in Aston Villa's favour, which I know that might shock quite a few people, but I just really see the hunger in this Aston Villa team to stay in the Premier League. You can see they want to survive. You can see they've been fighting so hard as of late to stay in the Premier League. And I mean, hey, they got a win versus Arsenal. How rare is that? As I said, it genuinely could go either way. Now, in terms of the final player to watch in the season, I don't know, I really want to go for someone like Trezeguet, because in my opinion, I think Trezeguet has been a much better player than Jack Grealish since football has returned. I think if the season only started once football did return, if that was the beginning of a new season, way more people would be talking about the form of Trezeguet. But you know what? I am actually going to talk about Jack Grealish in this. Not because he is Aston Villa's top scorer this season, not because he's their top assist maker, just purely because I believe this is his last ever game for Aston Villa. And I'm saying this purely because he's I'm saying that purely because he's in his early 20s, whether he gets relegated, whether he doesn't. I think he's shown some kind of form this season that a top club will come pick up and swoop him. So just purely because it is probably his last game for Villa, I would say that's why you should watch him. Along with that, he has potential to be the best player on the pitch. So guys, that is it. Wow, the end of the season and the end of my last Premier League Matchweek prediction video of this season. I can't wait to do it once again next season. Once again, guys, if you do enjoy my content, please do consider subscribing to this channel. I would really appreciate this. But yes, guys, this has been fun. FYWN, I do love every single one of you. Stay awesome. Cheers.